When you hear the name John Calvin, what's the first thing that pops into your head? For a lot of people, it's this image of a super stern, joyless, kind of scary figure. But what if I told you the real John Calvin was, well, a whole lot more complicated and, frankly, a lot more surprising than that? Let's dig in and get past the caricature.
It really all starts with this one word, doesn't it? Joyless. That's the brand. It's the single adjective that seems to define this whole massive branch of thought. But you have to ask, is it fair? Is it even accurate?
I mean, here it is. This is the popular image, the stereotype we all kind of know. The idea that Calvin and his followers hated art, thought having fun was a sin, and basically just walked around thinking the world was an evil place to be escaped. But does that picture actually hold up?
So that's the big question, right? Is this caricature based in reality? Did Calvin himself actually tell people to live this grim, pleasure-free life? Well, instead of guessing, let's just go straight to the source. Wow, listen to his actual words here. He's talking about the beauty of flowers, the sweet odor that delights the senses. This does not sound like a guy who hates the world. It sounds like someone who sees God's own artistry in it and thinks we should, actually enjoy it. And this wasn't just a one-off comment. For Calvin, creation wasn't just about survival. He straight up argued that God made things not just for our basic needs, but specifically for our enjoyment and delight. Things like food, clothes, nature. He believed they had a purpose beyond just keeping us alive. They were meant for beauty, for pleasure. Okay, so if Calvin is talking about enjoying flowers and delighting in creation, where in the world did that grim stereotype come from? Well, to understand that, we have to get to the absolute foundation of his thinking, something he called two-part wisdom.
This right here is the very first sentence of his most famous work, the Institutes. For him, all true, solid wisdom, everything, boils down to these two things that are totally linked together: knowing God and knowing ourselves.
And he saw this as a kind of feedback loop, a two-way street. When you really contemplate God's perfection, it can't help but show you your own flaws. But at the same time, when you recognize your own weaknesses and limitations, it points you right back to God. You can't have one without the other.
Now, to make this idea feel a little less abstract and a little more real, let's use a modern analogy. Think about the world of cricket for a second. Let's say you play cricket on the weekends, and you think, hey, I'm pretty good at this. But then, one day you get to see a true master, someone like Freddie Flintoff, play up close. Suddenly, his incredible skill just throws your own abilities into sharp relief. You realize, oh, I'm not that good. That's Calvin's point. You can't truly understand yourself, your own skill level, without first seeing perfection. So if knowing God just makes us realize how flawed we are, does that mean that everything we do, everything humanity achieves, is just worthless? Well, not at all. This is where Calvin gets really surprising. This quote is just fascinating. He's saying that all these skills and trades, being a good craftsman or artist, are gifts from God, and get this, they are common to everyone, believers and non-believers alike. He saw God's generosity as something poured out on all of humanity, not just a select few. He made this really important distinction between two different areas of life. On one side, you have heavenly things, stuff like faith, salvation, knowing God. But then there's this whole other category of earthly things, government, science, the arts. And in that realm, he believed human reason and skill, as God's gifts, could absolutely flourish. So far from being some anti-culture guy, Calvin explicitly valued all these fields. He saw philosophy, law, medicine, art, all of it, not as things to be avoided, but as incredible gifts from God that actually benefit all of society. Okay, so we've got a God who creates a beautiful world for us to enjoy. And at the same time, we're deeply flawed people. So how do you hold those two ideas together? Well, that brings us to the central tension at the very heart of Calvin's view of what it means to be human. This right here is the core paradox of his whole system. On one hand, he was brutally honest about what he called our miserable condition, that we're flawed, we're messy, but on the other hand, he insisted that we should never forget our primeval dignity, that we are still packed with these incredible, by no means contemptible gifts from God. So let's just lay it all out side by side. The myth that he was joyless. The reality, he believed God literally made things for our enjoyment. The myth, he was anti-culture. The reality, he saw the arts and sciences as gifts from God to everyone. The myth, he was all about denying the world. The reality, It's a complex call to see both our deepest flaws and our highest dignity at the same time.
So what's the big takeaway here? We've gone from this flat, black and white caricature of a man to a portrait that's way more complex, way more challenging, and frankly, way more interesting.
The heart of Calvin's thought really is this delicate balance. It's not about choosing, are humans worthless or are humans great? It's about holding both truths in your hands at the same time. It's about being brutally realistic about our failings while still celebrating the incredible gifts we've been given.
And that leaves us with a question that's just as relevant today as it was 500 years ago. Calvin was wrestling with how to hold human depravity and human dignity together. And aren't we all still? How do we stay humble and realistic about our own flaws, about our society's flaws, while at the same time taking genuine pride in our art, our science, our greatest achievements? It's a tough balance to strike, and it's definitely something worth thinking about.